Alright, I figured I'd do a positive one. Hello, welcome to Collect Creations. This is the joy of physical media. The point of this video is a third part, to my, ongoing series of discussions about physical media as a concept, or just as a thing. My first one being the burden, that being upgrading constantly from DVD to Blu-ray to 4K, making sure you get the best ever version of a film possible. Constant struggle. Then you get the curse of physical media, which is the element of how many goddamn movies have been released on physical and how it's overwhelming. In this one, I want to kind of detail my personal journey with physical media and how there can be a joy in just getting variations of different films. In this case, I'm going to document from my earliest VHS to my latest, my most pivotal DVD and Blu-ray releases and 4K releases. The DVD one, I was actually going to go with Alien because I wanted to... I never really... We'll get to it, but I wanted to go with Alien, but I chose something different because I don't know what my DVD for Alien is anymore. I don't know if I have it anymore. Nevertheless, let's take a look at VHS to begin with. Now, I do have a selection, but my main one that's a defining thing for me is HR Pufnstuf. Now, I don't have many VHS left from when I was a kid. This is a 2-pack VHS. That's how many VHS we have. But if it helps, which I always find very funny, this is one episode. And it has not been rewound. Oh no. This is The Mechanical Boy, and episode number 2 is Showbiz Witch. So I think it's actually meant to be in that order. Showbiz Witch and The Mechanical Boy. Now, of course, I'm only 24, which you'd think I wouldn't have had to deal with such primitive formats. But no, in reality, I grew up with VHS. I had VHS till I was a teenager. I was using our VHS player because we had a VHS DVD player growing up. I think that was what we had mainly until we upgraded to Blu-ray. So we put the VHS DVD player in the playroom because we were kids. We had a whole room that was just for video games and toys and a big TV. And by big TV, I don't mean wide, I mean fat, like dimensionally. The classic one where you punched a little button at the front of the screen, or you'd get this buzz from all your hairs raising up as the electricity just zaps you. Those classic days. So there's some nostalgia for me. So we grew up with VHS. I used to use VHS a lot. We had a lot of backup tapes that we used to tape TV shows. It's a very common thing back in the day. They just taped TV shows so you could rewatch them. In fact, that kind of happened for like 30 to 40 years, didn't it? So, that was one of the main selling points of VHS. If you could get the films on VHS, but then you could also tape stuff from TV. So, yeah, it's a bizarre thing for me that it's just 2 episodes on VHS. My main point being that I grew up with a show as crazy and wacky as HR Pufnstuf, and I've since upgraded. I've bought the DVD set because a store in Melbourne called Play Music DVDs had a copy, and I was like, hey, it's every single episode, which I know you can actually watch every episode on YouTube for free. But I figured that was just a nice enough upgrade. It's a childhood nostalgia. I've got some figurines that they're Funko Pops, but they're HR Pufnstuf, and it's a nice treasuring thing for me. I have no idea. I could not tell you how many times I rewound these 2 episodes alone. Yet, ironically, my other 2 examples for VHS seem to be the complete opposite of that. One being the original Star Wars, which I have the original trilogy, as it says, Star Wars last time available original. So it's widescreen, or at least I don't even think this one's widescreen, but this is pre any addition to it, to the point that it's copyright 1995. It might still be called, well, it doesn't even say A New Hope on the cover. It's pre the prequels. It's the original Star Wars. I keep that as a memento thing. It's not exactly the most expensive thing in the world. Like, you can't really resell it and get a good price because VHS, for one thing. But also, a lot of people have it. Just a thing. I don't really know how many times I watched that as a kid, because I was born in 98. By that stage, the prequels were already out. The first one, at least. And so they had released a special edition on DVD. So by the time I was watching Star Wars, I was watching the DVDs. I didn't watch the VHS till a couple years later, or at least I'm pretty sure. But at the same time, I'm pretty sure we didn't get each DVD release of Star Wars individually. However, I do know my older brother Dad went with my older brother to see Revenge of the Sith in cinema, apparently, which he was, 6 or 7? So I guess he would have enjoyed it. I don't think he'd remember it, but still. Nevertheless, it's a pivotal thing, at least collection-wise, given I've advanced from Star Wars on VHS to DVD to Blu-ray to 4K to the Project 4K 77 and the such. But another one that I think was one that was quite pivotal in common rewatches was this one. It's The Simpsons Around the World. No, Against the World. Great price, only $19.95. That's actually kind of a ridiculous price when you think about it. 4 hilarious uncut episodes, including Bart vs. Australia, because we're Australian. But this has like 4 classic episodes. You get Homer vs. Patty and Selma, you get Marge vs. the Monorail, Homer vs. Lisa and the Eighth Commandment, and Bart vs. Australia. Now, the interesting thing is, you kind of actually look at it and you realize that there is 2 different sleeves on here, because they've clearly done that. Like, I could probably take this out and remove it, and you'd get a whole different second image, but I'm not going to do that, because it's old. This is approximately 88 minutes long. The amount of times I would rewatch this episode, like, of course, that's why Marge vs. the Monorail is probably my favorite episode of The Simpsons, because it's terrifying. Nevertheless, it was always fun to like grow up with VHS and have those different formats. We had a huge drawer full of it, and it was just the way technology was back then. I wasn't unaccustomed to the advancements, but as a kid, it was just, you had VHS for either taping TV shows that we couldn't tape on the main TV, mostly because we had like a digital video recorder or whatever. Back when they were really big, pre us getting Foxtel, and you could only tape like 2 shows while watching one. So, yeah, God, a lot of classic stuff like that. I remember back when, I think it was a TV function or it was a player function, where you could have like a mini screen in the corner to show you what the other channel is showing, so you could flick back and forth. So like if there's an ad playing here, you can go to this channel, and then you can watch that and then skip back to the other channel once back. I was like, it's back on, quick, put it on. Picture-in-picture or something, I don't remember. Still, this is mostly an advancement of technology, isn't it? Which then brings me, of course, to DVD, because I still grew up with DVDs, and I had a whole shelf of DVDs. I know this is a Blu-ray behind me, but over there's the DVDs, and a lot of those we've had all of my life. But one that I haven't had for all of my life, that I've only had for the past couple of years, however, it has been a defining part of my film journey, my respect and love for film, my favourite Australian film, in fact, is Love Serenade, which I've actually since gotten signed by Miranda Otto, because there's a convention. This is one of my favourite, this is just my favourite Australian film. Obviously it's one of my favourites. It's not the best in terms of a DVD, but for what it is, it's cute. It's also pink, which is really nice, and it comes with the commentary, which the Blu-ray does not, which is really annoying. It's also in 4:3, which is also annoying. It's very, very dated for a DVD. It also looks really like you look at, it just looks cheap in terms of how it's been made. But I got this before the Blu-ray was eventually released in Australia, to the point that I got to sign it before the Blu-ray was eventually released in Australia. But yeah, I don't know, it's cute. I think for me, I wanted to have Alien as my example for DVD, because I don't really remember what my first DVD was. I could basically get the Star Wars trilogy and be like, this was my first DVD. But I don't remember what my first DVD was. Because it was just a format. It was just a way that we watched stuff. I remember Independence Day. I remember When Harry Met Sally. There are so many films that I've watched in my life that started on DVD. And I mean, hell, I even mentioned I've bought H.R. Puff and stuff since on DVD. Even The Simpsons. I've got the first 10 seasons on DVD. Mostly because my shelf could fit 2 extra slots. So I bought season 9 and 10. Figured, why not? You know, the show isn't terrible after season 8, it's just not the best. So, you know, it's one of those things where I've bought that to upgrade, to collect, because there were sales and I had money. Most of the time it was because there were sales and I had money. But even then, I've had DVDs in the past where I've bought them myself. Most of these, Dad bought. In fact, all of these, not all of these, the majority of these that I'm going to show you today, my parents bought. I usually credit my dad, but I don't know if he went out and bought H.R. Puff and stuff. You gotta remember, it's a TV show from the 70s that I watched in the 2000s as a child growing up. I adored it. I think it was on TV as well. I don't know, reruns or something. I don't know. Obviously reruns, but it's a bizarre thing. But DVD for me is like, I see it as the most inferior format. Like I despise DVD. The cases are big. It's low quality. There's no fun in it, and it's one of those forced measures for most of the time, because with DVD sales, they're the peak ones when it comes to physical media. People buy DVD more than they will buy Blu-ray, more than they will buy 4K. Also because it's usually cheaper, and some people prefer the cheaper alternative. They don't care much for the quality of the film. They don't care if it has special features or not. But then even that being said, there are films that I've had on DVD that have had more interesting design packaging than the Blu-ray sets that I've gotten. For example, I had all of the Harry Potter films on DVD. I've actually since given them to my cousin because he's got little kids. And I've since upgraded to the 4K set. But the 4K set isn't that outstanding when it comes to packaging design. Like, it's one of those, you get an outer shell box, which just all the 8 cases sleeve out. It's pretty simple. It's not much to it. But the original designs for the first 2 films, maybe even the third one, had slip covers. They had really nice pop-outs and everything. I can't even remember how to detail it because there was so much stuff that it came with just on the physical element of it, because having a DVD was such a privileged thing. It wasn't, because it's still a regular commodity, but at the same time it was like, you could make these with such just care and love and be like, hey, this will be really cool as a collector's thing. But it was also one of those series that, because it kept going on to the point that the last one we got as a combo Blu-ray set. So like the Deathly Hallows Part 2 we got as a combo Blu-ray set because Blu-ray was out by the time the movie came out. And so that was like the only different one. The first 2 films had these nice slip covers and booklets. And then like the third one onwards, they didn't have anything. I think the 4th one we got had a lenticular cover. Actually, I think that might have been the 4th and the 6th one. But at the same time, no, 4th and 5th? Which one's the Order of the Phoenix? Yeah, that's the 5th one. Right, because there's 7 books. I forget about that sometimes. The 4th and 5th one had lenticular covers. It was pretty neat, but at the same time, they were all completely different to each other. There was no consistency between them. So, getting rid of the set, I was totally okay with. Sometimes I like consistency. And yeah, it's just, I think DVD was just one of those classic sets, one of those classic design choices that it was smaller, it was cheaper, you could rewatch it endlessly, and it looked better, it sounded better. It was always that thing of, hey, you can watch this in widescreen now, and if the original DVD release was a poor release because they just put in a 4x3 copy of a film, say Love Serenade, for example. It's the widescreen film, but it's in 4x3, which really sucks. And sometimes you just kind of gotta roll with it until they make a better version. Which, of course, became the detriment of such a format. It's still going on till today. There are plenty of films that my dad will buy that he can only find DVD releases of, and then when he gets those DVD releases, they're just not formatted right. He had a trilogy set of 3 different westerns, and one of them was actually, yeah, no, I'm pretty sure they were westerns. And, like, the one that he really wanted to watch was in the wrong aspect ratio. No, they weren't westerns. They were Elvis films. And it was a modern set that had come out, like, in the past 2-3 years. And one of the films hadn't been remastered, so it was just a 4:3 version of a widescreen film, which was bizarre. You had to literally zoom in to actually be able to get it to take up all the borders, which didn't make any sense. It's a newer set, but only on DVD. So, but he's got westerns that are like that as well. There are a lot of older films that are like that, which is a disappointing function of the format. However, of course, then you get to my pride and joy, the Blu-rays. I have 3 examples here, one being a 4K, which is the first 4K I bought. But we'll start with the first Blu-ray I ever got. And this is a first Blu-ray that was given to me. I didn't have money at the time. I mean, I had pocket money, like $5 a week or whatever, if I cleaned my bed and did my bed and cleaned my room. Either way, if I cleaned up a little, I got some pocket money. However, for my birthday one year, my dad got me Shaun of the Dead. Got me Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz. Both were like this with their limited edition comic book slip covers and then the original artwork on the inside. And, you know, a slew of bonus features as well. And I have watched this one copy of this film too many times. Too many times to count. That release came out in 2011, according to the back of the copyright. Obviously, it's not a 2011 film. It's like, what, 2004, 2005? Which, yeah, 2004. I like that it still has a copyright date for the original film. Sometimes they just don't do that. Sometimes it's really weird. So, it comes to 2011 and I get that film. That's great. You know, they did all these Blu-ray releases in 2011. That was basically the time, that was the time that we got Blu-ray. I think we'd gotten Blu-ray releases in 2010 because we got the Nintendo Wii and we got a home theater system bundle. So you get your big widescreen TV, you get tall tower speakers at the front, tall tower speakers at the back. I'm pointing to the front and back of my room. I film on the side. It's a bit awkward. Nevertheless, you know, you get the subwoofer, you get the whole 5.1 system, and to be fair, we had that system for a decade before it started cutting out. You know, you get the big screen, you get the Blu-ray player. The Blu-ray player actually had 3D capability as well, which is kind of funny because the TV was not a 3D TV. So, I don't know. They don't do 3D players anymore, do they? They don't even do 3D TVs. That's a hard one to come by. We had a few films that we'd gotten from Blu-ray. You know, again, like I mentioned, Harry Potter, Deathly Hallows Part 2, I think? Maybe Part 1 and Part 2, but I'm pretty sure definitely Part 2 was a DVD Blu-ray combo. I don't remember what our original Blu-ray releases were in terms of just having high quality stuff, because I wasn't buying movies by that stage. Like, I had a few that were mine per se. Like, I had a childhood favorite, Sky High, the Disney film with Kurt Russell, and I still have that DVD, and I adore that film. But it's one of those things where it's like, when it comes to Blu-ray releases, I wasn't buying them yet. But Shaun of the Dead was the first one I ever received, because we had seen the film on SBS one night, and I think within the year, I think I've maybe watched that in 2000 and I'd say 2008, 2009 period, because Hot Fuzz had come out like the year before it. I think that was 2007 it had come out, and maybe it was 2007 we watched Shaun of the Dead, I don't remember, but it was in that 2007, 2008 period. The next year, or maybe 2009, Hot Fuzz was on TV one night. So, you know, they usually give it a year or two before it's on TV. And we watched that on TV. We only got halfway through it, so we didn't even get to the twist of the movie. By this stage, it was just a comedy slasher film. What are the odds? And it wasn't until actually this same birthday that my dad had gotten me Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz in these limited edition, you know, comic book artwork like covers. And suddenly the whole, you know, everything changed. The Fire Nation had attacked. No, they hadn't. Nothing really changed. Suddenly we just had a better format. We could just watch films in a better way, and that was great. But of course, it wasn't until a few months later that I actually bought my first Blu-ray, which the film came out in 2010, the packaging design 2012. I got Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. I'd seen this on TV as well. A lot of these ones were like, seen it on TV, loved it, got to get the film, and they had the Blu-ray. This is my original release of the film. I've since upgraded 4K Steelbook and the likes. You know, you get your alternate artwork on the inside as well, which is always great. A slew of bonus features, like they all were. And of course, peak time for me to love Edgar Wright. You know, you had Hot Fuzz, Shaun of the Dead, Scott Pilgrim, World's End was just around the corner. It was great. It was a good time to be alive. To be fair, I haven't really been disappointed by any of his films. This was the first ever Blu-ray I remember myself buying. And I think that was just because of, and this is like a couple months later, so again, 2012. Because by this stage, you know, I'd had Hot Fuzz and Shaun of the Dead. I'd seen Scott Pilgrim on TV and really liked it. I think I saw it in it must have been 2011, obviously. Which is it's such a weird thing to think about. If the film came out in 2010, why did I only get it 2011? Why was it on TV like the following year? But that's what I remember. So, yeah, I bought the Blu-ray and I haven't really looked back, per se. I've obviously gotten DVD releases. Love Serenade was the only release that had existed of the film before they remastered it and put it on Netflix, before they remastered it and put it on Blu-ray. And from there, I was collecting Blu-rays, not as a habit, just as if I liked the film, and you know, or most of the time. By that stage, early in those days of collecting, it was if I liked the film and wanted the film, I would buy the film on Blu-ray. But sometimes I'd still be buying DVDs. I got like Inglourious Bastards on DVD. I didn't even wait for the Blu-ray. I just got the DVD. There was a Blu-ray that existed. I never even thought about it. I just got the DVD. And yet, that was the only Tarantino film I ever had on DVD, except for technically From Dusk Till Dawn. Like, all the rest of his films, we had on Blu-ray. Like, my dad had bought the 2 Kill Bill films, and I remember, I don't think it was me, I think he bought Pulp Fiction. But I do remember the first R18 film I bought. I was not 18 when I bought it. It was Apocalypse Now. I'd heard about it because Dad had mentioned it before. It was in films, my film studies part of high school by that stage, so who didn't know about Apocalypse Now? And I'd never seen it, so I figured, hey, I'll buy it, but I wasn't 18. I think I was 16, but, you know, the classic, I've got enough facial hair to look like I'm 18. The person didn't ask. I was, like, hesitant to buy it because I'm like, it's R18. I shouldn't be able to buy this. But I had in my mind, I'm like, hey, I could say I'm buying it for Dad. Because, you know, that makes sense. I could say his birthday's coming up. I'm buying it for him. I think I was buying it for him. I'll be honest. I can't remember. I remember being in the store and buying it. And I'm pretty sure I called him and asked him if it was worth getting. And he said it was. And I'm like, well, it's R18. We'll see how this goes. And they let me buy it. That wasn't even, like, I don't think the person even gave a shit. So, you know, which is fine. The first R18 movie I saw in cinema was The Hateful Eight, because I was 17 at the time. They weren't letting people in if they weren't 17, if they weren't 18 at the cinema. And this was like a 70mm projection as well, the roadshow version. But, yeah, that was fun. Because they were asking people, like, oh, like, if you're under 18, you got to let us know. And I'm like, what if I don't tell them? What will happen? And they didn't ask. Just walked by, showed them the ticket, went in, easy peasy. That's right, Dad was there, it was fine. So then we get to 4Ks. Side tangent about my experience of movies aside. 4K was a quality that we didn't dive into immediately. I don't know anyone who did. I didn't know anyone until high school who was buying 4Ks. Until university who was buying 4Ks. And that's fair because I didn't get this film until university. This was 2018 when I bought my first ever 4K, which is in my hands right now. I'd actually bought the Blu-ray of it. They had a limited edition with a bonus disc version, which I still have on Blu-ray on the shelf somewhere. This is Blade Runner 2049, my favorite film of all time. It's if it bewilders you, a lot of these films are some of my favorite films of all time. Yeah, the exception being The Simpsons and HR Puff and stuff because they're TV shows. But yeah, no, this was a fun choice because I knew that if I was going to get a 4K, it was going to be Blade Runner. I had grown up with the DVD of the original film, and that was the director's cut. So I didn't get the final cut till the Blu-ray came out, and then I got the 4K like a year or two later because it came out in Australia. So I had to import the Blu-ray release. And I've even upgraded again since then to get like the 5-disc release that comes with every single version of the film. And I've put my 4K into that. So, you know, because it's like, I'm going to watch the final cut, I'll watch the 4K, I won't watch the standard Blu-ray. So, yeah, Blade Runner 2049, that was a fun experience when it came to buying 4K. Because I had seen it in cinema when it was released. We were in the back row, packed cinema, which was interesting. And most of the time, I couldn't actually hear what some of the characters were saying, especially there were some scenes where there's a character who's surrounded by water, and it was very echoey. Didn't know what he was saying. A lot of the plot went completely over my head. But the fun part was that I had this great ambiance, and I could kind of feel like I was in the world whilst having these amazing visuals. A few months later, the Astor Theatre projects the film in 4K. I go watch it front row. Mind-blowing experience. To see that in 4K was intense. I'm yet to see it in IMAX, but my god, would I love to. They just keep showing it with the final cut of Blade Runner, and I'm like, I don't need a double feature. I've seen Blade Runner, the final cut in 4K on IMAX. I get it. Let me just watch the 2049. So, you know, and it's usually because they will like start at 7:30 and it won't be till like past midnight. So maybe one day when I've got a car and I can just drive to the IMAX, then I'll do a double feature. But for now, not happening. Nevertheless, you know, I buy the Blu-ray limited edition release. Of course I'm going to buy it. I absolutely adore the film. I watched it again. 3 times watched it now. So then we decide we're going to move. We used to live in northern suburbs. We moved. I knew that we were going to move and I would have a theatre room all to myself, technically. And I'm like, well, I got to get a new TV. I got to get a 4K TV. And unfortunately, I went with the cheaper side, so I just had standard HDR grading. There's a lot of things that TV was pretty lackluster. I've given it to my girlfriend's parents as a, I gave it to them as a Christmas gift. Because their TV was awful. Like, their TV was like it had purple spots all over it because of how old it was. So, any upgrade for them was an upgrade. So, they got a Christmas gift. That was my old TV. And the TV was still working fine. I just didn't need any more. I wanted to upgrade. I upgraded to OLED, Dolby Vision, all that stuff. But still, the TV I went with, 55 inches, really nice, looked great on the wall. We had it for months before we moved. I bought it early 2018. We didn't move till May 2018, the end of May. So I had the TV for I think about a month or two because they had a sale on. I bought it, we took it out of the box, I hooked it up, and I bought Blade Runner 2049 with it because of course when they're selling you with the TV, they're like, oh, you gotta buy the 4K player, you gotta buy the special HDMI cables, you gotta buy a film. And when they suggested you gotta buy a film, I'm like, don't worry, I know what I'm doing. I already had Blade Runner 2049 in hand. I'm like, this is what I'm getting. Because I knew if I'm going to get a 4K, I'm going to get my favorite film. I don't even know what my second 4K was. I don't remember for the life of me. It doesn't matter, because it's like, from then on, it was just upgrading. It was buying films because they look great on 4K. There were films that didn't look great on 4K, which I've since regretted buying, such as Terminator 2 Judgment Day. But, you know, sometimes you just kind of got to roll the punches. But at the same time, watching that on 4K was great. I think I watched it another time just to watch the 4K of it, and then when we moved in here, I watched it again. I have yet to watch it on my OLED screen. I tested it out when I got the OLED to check out what some of the scenes look like, and of course it still looks great. But it doesn't have Dolby Vision grading. It doesn't have anything... I mean, it says it has Dolby Vision, but I think it's one of those HDR things that actually doesn't change too much in the overall grading. There was a video that went around a few years back talking about how they've actually lied and said that it wasn't actually... It is like very basic HDR grading, but it's not that dramatic in contrast to a lot of proper graded films with HDR. So, of a first 4K choice, if I hadn't have bought the film before, still a good choice. But since then, in contrast to many other 4Ks that exists, you know. The last one I kind of wanted to mention, because that's my 4K. That's what got me into 4K UHDs, got me into upgrading. Then as the last but not least, we have multi-regional stuff. Now this is still stuff that, like, I'd grown up with some DVDs like Paul and one particular volume of Doctor Who, because we went overseas, bought the UK release of Doctor Who and the German release of Paul. And they were region 2. So we got back home, we could play them on the Blu-ray player, but we couldn't play them on the DVD player, because the DVD VHS player was region 4, whereas the Blu-ray player was actually all regions for DVD, which is very rare at the time. Like, I think it was a common thing at the time, because that's why we had a lot of region 2 DVDs and didn't think about it, but then we couldn't watch, like, I think when we got rid of that Blu-ray player, it was like, oh, you can't watch anything region 2 now. You have to get a new player. I started with House. My favorite... Is it my favorite Japanese film? I don't know. Is it one of them? Yeah, it's one of my favorite Japanese films. This is the Criterion release. Obviously, yeah, boutique brand, region A release. I bought it because a podcast that I was watching, a film podcast, were talking about. They did like 2 or 3 films every fortnight. And they would tell you, you know, at the end of the episode, hey, we're going to watch these films, go watch them. And the only way to get House at the time was to get the Criterion. I do believe that the Masters of Cinema release had come out by that stage, but I don't know, some part of me was just wanted the Criterion. I'd never really heard of Criterion, but I loved the artwork. I mean, like look at that. That's fun artwork. Not to mention it came with a slew of special features. Everything about it screamed, this is what I wanted. And I think I even got it from Barnes & Noble at the time, because you could ship from Barnes & Noble to Australia at the time. You can't do that anymore. That was like my main retailer for Criterions. 50% off, got Hausu. Actually, I didn't. I think I got it just because it was there. I don't think I got it during a sale. I didn't know about the sale by that stage. Again, everything's a stepping stone. And I went to watch it with a friend one night, and I couldn't because my Blu-ray player couldn't play it. I didn't have a region A player. I didn't have a region anything above B. I didn't have anything else. It's like, oh no, what do I do? So, of course, I experimented. I looked around, found a place that actually... I recently learned that there was a term for it, but I can't remember what that term is. Most people in Australia have bought the laser Blu-ray player. That Blu-ray player plays all regions, which is fine. I've heard it's a good player, it's cheap, and it plays all regions, and it can last for years. Good. I went with the modified versions of a player. It was basically, I had a Blu-ray player I'd gotten for my birthday back in, like... I think my 18th birthday, I don't know, it was either my 16th or my 18th. One of those 2 years, I'm pretty sure it was my 18th, because I think my 16th I got this camcorder for my, and the tripod as well. I think it was my 18th birthday, I got a Blu-ray player for my dad. And so, I had that. My brother has it now. In fact, it's in his room. I don't need it anymore. I've gotten upgraded since to 2 different 4K players. But I bought the exact same player about 2 years later, 2 or 3 years later, which was modified. Because I figured, I'll buy a whole new player, it'll be modified, that'll be great. Still expensive, none of this shit's ever cheap. And it worked out really good. I've currently got out in the lounge room, so my parents can watch Region A stuff, or any region kind of DVD Blu-ray that they want. So, I've since upgraded. I've got a 4K player that's all regions. It's fine. It doesn't have Dolby Vision, so I only use it for Region A stuff. It is how it is. Go with Panasonic, kids. Sony fucking sucks. So, yeah, I was finally able to watch House, and then suddenly, bam, everything evolved. Everything changed. I think most dramatically, because 4K was still a growing format by that stage, so not a lot of 4Ks were out, and the ones that were, I didn't know yet if they were good or bad. It took a year or two until I realized that you can actually look it up, and there's Blu-ray.com, and like the High Def Digest, and so many different websites that all review Blu-rays and 4Ks, and I'm like, this is wonderful. Why did I not know about this earlier? And of course, I'm still learning about stuff. I'm still finding different websites to buy, to study, to learn. There's so many different things that I'm still learning about, including different boutique labels and all that kind of stuff. And to have this pile to grow from HR Puff and stuff on VHS to, you know, Shaun of the Dead and Scott Pilgrim to Blade Runner 2049, and I think lastly being House, which I think is the most important Blu-ray I've ever bought in my entire life. And that's only because it's allowed me to experience a whole different formatting world. And it's not just the region element, like Region A, Region C. I've never really found that much to be an annoyance. There's a lot of people who like to complain, oh, is this going to be in Region A? Is this going to be... It's mostly Americans. They like to complain about how the fact that most Region B stuff is only Region B locked and they can't watch it. But just put up a little bit of expenditure and you will see that you can literally watch everything if you get a region-free player. It's not too difficult. I mean, it might be. I don't know. I'm pretty bloody well sure it ain't. But, like, I found one of the only places in, like, my whole entire state that has... like modifiers. They've got a whole goddamn country. I'm pretty sure they'll be fine. Nevertheless, they like to complain. It is what it is. The benefit of 4K UHD, it's all regions. That's it. Same as VHS. Dare I say it? Bizarre. It's a whole loop around back to the whole region-free stuff. But yeah, with Criterion, with House, it was... or House. I realize I haven't said it like it's meant to be said. Suddenly, everything is just different. I learn about steelbooks, I learn about Criterions, boutique Blu-rays, limited edition releases. You look around this room, most of the stuff here I've bought because I bought this, because of that one podcast that was talking about it. I discovered that 1977, one of my favourite years of cinema, everything changed. It was great. I had all this access. I was able to get most of David Lynch's filmography because some of them were Criterion releases. There's all these different brands and labels, and some of them have started upgrading to 4K, which is really nice. It's just a wonderful thing to be able to interact with all these different formats, to interact with all these different films. And it's not just because of the formats that I've actually been able to find these, it's because of my growth when it comes to Blu-rays and 4Ks, and just films in general. If not for the DVD shelf and VHS that I had as a kid, if not for the suggestions from my parents, from like the kind of goofy but also kind of horror films that my dad gave me from, like, again, Alien and Shaun of the Dead and American Werewolf in London, 3 of the more notable films I ever experienced as a child, to stuff like Mum would watch, which would be like Pride and Prejudice and a lot of British comedies, usually rom-coms, but usually comedies in general. And, like, there was such a mixture of my parents' influence, what they had on the shelf, what we were watching on TV, and now I'm here with almost 1,900 films to my name. Actually, I'd say definitely that number, because a lot of these sets are sets, but they only scan as one film, which is really annoying. So, though I do realise that a lot of those are duplicates as well because of steelbooks. So, you know, sometimes it is what it is. Anyway, I think overall the joy of physical media is just the ability to just experiment, to find new loves, to find new passions. All the films and shows I've shown today are very different. You know, you get hard sci-fi with Blade Runner, you get crazy Japanese stuff with Hausu, you get some goofy action comedy with Scott Pilgrim and Shaun of the Dead, some excellent Australian cinema with Love Serenade, The Simpsons, Star Wars. Did I mention H.R. Puff and stuff? Holy mother of God. It's just, it's a hell of a selection, and it's great. And that for me is the joy. The joy of physical media is just the pleasure of getting to experience what you didn't think you'd ever be able to experience. And don't you dare say I can watch this show on Netflix. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. I don't know, maybe I'll do a joy of streaming services. It'll be a weird contrast, but maybe I could do it. I could talk about Criterion Channel for an hour. We'll see. I don't know. Anyway, thanks for watching. If you've enjoyed, feel free to like, share, and subscribe for more. Let me know what your favourite releases that you've grown up with or that you've experienced over the past 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years of your life. And I'll see you next time. Adios.